Awesome.
Tim Barbier to Esoteric Circle YouTube channel here as we uh, start kind of a new little series here on this channel about spiritual journeys and different people who are subscribers to this channel are have some fascinating stories, and I'm excited to introduce you to Tim Barbier from Idaho, and he's going to be um, bringing us just some of his background, his spiritual journey, and I'm fascinated by it. And he's a good friend, and he's on our Discord group as well. So if you're interested in joining a study group and a little community on Discord from this channel, just let us know here. Send us a message, and we'll give you an invitation. So awesome. Well, Tim, it's great, and it's great to have you here with me and with us, and everything is looking like we're ready to go here. So I'm excited to have you with us, and just kind of wanted to start off with just a kind of an overall idea of what we're doing here. One of the things that I started doing 2 years ago about this time was doing a lot of videos and connecting with people over the internet because of the pandemic about 2 years ago right now. And
Yeah.
this has been something which has really kind of revolutionized how I connect with people, and it's just been wonderful how in the midst of such tragedy and suffering that our lives are turned upside down, and we adjust. We know how to adjust to things, and so
Yeah.
that's what I have done in this channel over the last couple of years has just been a joy, and I've really enjoyed it. And one of the main reasons is meeting people like you and just hearing about your story and knowing that every one of us is on a journey. We're all on spiritual journeys, and I that's where the
Yes.
Gnostics. I love the Gnostics in terms of really almost climbing out of the oubliette, and that's what we're trying to do together. We're trying to figure out how to get out, and we're using Christ as our guide in terms of getting out of this prison, this sense of being entrapped. And um your story is gonna ring true and really sound familiar to a lot of people in terms of your walk that you've done here, in terms of you're in your mid 40s, and I mean at that point in our lives, I mean I'm in my mid 50s. You see a lot of things, and you meet a lot of people, but it all starts in back in childhood, and we have so many seeds that are planted. So tell us a little bit about some of your background, and just kind of start wherever you'd like.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to go back more to my childhood. The faith, the religion that I was exposed to growing up was my mother was a Jehovah's Witness, and um, I guess you would say there was something about it that just never really quite fit with who I was. It never really resonated well with me. And so by the age of 15, my mom, well, she actually became a Jehovah's Witness when I was about 5 or 6. I think she was baptized when I was 6. And so she really was serious about it, very zealous. And she wanted the whole family to have this new faith that she had found. And of course, my dad, he wasn't so thrilled by it. And he just kind of went along with it over the years. And but I mean, there were some things that I do respect about that. I don't want to sit here and denigrate the faith of people who are Jehovah's Witnesses, but there was some things that I still do respect about their beliefs. But overall, it just did not feel right to who I was. And so by the age of 15, I was a very challenging child. I was kind of the strong-willed child. And so I just said I pretty much didn't want anything more to do with it. And I didn't want to go to the Kingdom Hall anymore. And that was it. I said, I'm not going to do it. And so that was pretty much the end of it. And of course, my mom, that was pretty devastating for her because she wanted that so bad. My sister, she went along with it and ended up becoming baptized when she was, I think, 17. And I don't know if you know this about the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I was never baptized. If you are ever baptized, then if you leave or become disfellowshipped, is what they call it, then you are really shunned and ostracized. It's kind of they take some scriptures and use it. They really do distort these scriptures, and they justify the disposition once a person has left. That is like leaving Jehovah. That is, so they justify the action of treating that person as if they are dead. So they don't really, it does cause it splits a lot of families up. And so I really had a hard time with that because my sister did become disfellowship later on. And my parents actually, they don't speak now. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Are you connected with your sister?
She just, not really, unfortunately. She, I text with her. She doesn't really answer my calls. She kind of just abandoned our whole family and didn't want anything to do with it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope someday that we can reunite and, and I can catch up with her. I'd sure love to tell her a lot of things that I've experienced because we haven't really talked much over the years. But
well, it's amazing how you got well, I don't know if you would label it a cult or not, but it sure has the characteristics of it in terms of the treatment of I mean, back in Indiana, I was around Amish, and the Amish are very similar. They called them Jack Amish, and the folks who are completely shunned, and that is it's amazing that you were able in your journey to have that light, because you were early teens, right? When
yes.
you said, "Hey, I'm ready to do something." I mean, that's very brave at that point. But you're able to have a light that is guiding you, and that's what we talk a lot about in terms of the spiritual journey, is that something is guiding you out. Something is still guiding you out, and that's what fascinates me, is that we all, everyone I'm encountering here, especially on this channel, everyone is like finding this and finding this and saying, "Oh, here we go." And I have found that there are certain people, certain authors, certain ideas, which help guide us out. And for me, it's almost been, in the fourth way, it talks a lot about this sense of recollection. In the Orthodoxy, it talks about remembering. And so that implicit in all that is that there's something that we're born with. There's something that is slowly emerging from within us. And it takes a while. And in our Discord group, we're studying Moravia, Gnosis 1, and we're talking about how it takes a little by little. We're all initiates. And you have discovered that you're an initiate of, I don't know, you're a big fan of Rudolf Steiner. We're going to talk about Steiner soon. But just, the initiates of the mystery school and the Essenes, and something about that, and so on my journey, and you can speak to this, I'll be quiet, but on my journey, certain things like, the Essenes, Akhenaten, and Mount Carmel, and Qumran, and all of a sudden, in my early 40s, I was like, what? I want to know more about that. I'm interested in that. And now you've introduced me to Rudolf Steiner in this whole idea of the incarnation of the Buddha with Jesus and how fascinating some of these ideas are. So talk
Right.
a little bit about some of the ideas, because there are people out there who are going to be listening who are also trying to get out of the Jehovah's Witness or Scientology or something where there's this
Sure.
cult-like atmosphere, even Mormonism. I mean, the Mormon church right now is really struggling. People are leaving left and right. And
Hmm.
even in evangelical Christianity, there's a lot of deconstruction going on out there with people
Oh yeah.
and the politics that have happened over the last 4 or 5 years. And what was it that sparked your interest in terms of, I got to get out of here? And what was it that first said, I'm going to go this way?
Well, I'd say this happened in skipping quite a ways forward from my teenage years. Later on in my early 30s, I had sort of, the only way I can really describe it was just an internal shift where I had some sort of awakening inside of me that realized that I had to discover who I really am. And because I felt like I didn't really know what I believed. I was believing things that had been given to me by the world or by people, my parents, the society. And so this was back in the earlier days of the internet. I got on the internet, and first thing I had to do was research the Jehovah's Witness faith and find out what is it. Do I really believe this? Because the tentacles were still there. They still had a hold of me. From all the how that was really instilled in me as a child. And so it didn't take me long to figure out, okay, yes, I can let this go because this is not something that I really believe in. And that just opened up the door really for my journey in my adult life. So I was about 32 when that started. And I just gotten off of antidepressants for anxiety that I was on for years. And so there was, all those things that were being suppressed, my emotions by the antidepressants. Um, it was like these emotions were just all coming up. And I realized I had to do this deep inner searching. And then that led me in my early 30s to, I didn't really get deep into esoteric Christianity or Steiner or anything, but I did search out the internet a lot, and I got into a little bit of the new age stuff that was kind of being thrown around on the internet at that time, but that never really stuck with me. It wasn't until later I kind of, after that little bit of an awakening, I had this glimpse that told me there was something much deeper out there. I kind of fell back asleep a little bit and back into, going along with the worldly ways. And it wasn't until later when I was about 38, after going through a relationship, a breakup, where I finally put an end to it with a relationship with a woman that went on for several years, off and on. It was very tumultuous, just very unhealthy. And I experienced some very traumatic things through that relationship, some horrible things she did to me. And of course, I had my own faults too, things that I did wrong in that relationship. But that just really did something to me, and it led to a tremendous amount of suffering. And that suffering really impelled me in this new direction to want to figure out what is really going on, because what the world and society was telling me who I was and what we were supposed to be here doing, what it means to be successful and all that just wasn't cutting it for me. So when I was 39, I was just in a really horrible spot. I wasn't happy with my job, and I was physically, I was completely worn out, just exhausted. And I had something that happened to me overnight. It was just like this shift where it was like what happened to me earlier in my 30s, but just like so much more intense that I like changed overnight. It was like being lifted out of this, our everyday lives, of being caught up in, the fast pace, going to work, and just being responsible, having our responsibilities, what the world tells us our responsibilities should be. And I I can't really put it into words because it was like Ted Nottingham. I think he describes it very good. You and I both know. He says this, experiencing this elevated state of consciousness, I guess is one way of putting it, can be so disoriented and can give you a type of psychological vertigo. And that's really what it felt like to me, because I was lifted out and able to just look down on what was going on with my life in the world. And it just seemed like we're all so asleep. We're in a hurry. We're the human race. What is this human race anyways? It's like we're all in this race, and where is it going? And certainly I felt deep within me that, you know, where the world tells us we're going, that's not really where we should be going. There's somewhere different. And so this lasted, after I had that experience, it lasted for, oh gosh, almost a couple of months. And not with the same intensity. I guess for the first month, it was just very intense. And I just, it led me into, eventually into discovering esoteric writings, esoteric philosophy. And then for the first time, I was like, okay, this is making sense to me. I didn't know this stuff was out there, that people actually were talking about this. This makes more sense. This explains more of what the human condition is. And so, yeah, that's kind of what happened to me when I was 39, and it's never been the same since. Yeah, I did.
I mean, you had an aha moment. I mean, you really did. That's the thing that we talk about a lot on this channel, and then on Discord, is we all have to have these experiences. These have to be tangible things. A lot of people get into the fourth way stuff, and it's just about the mechanics of it, or they talk about grace in terms of the mechanics of it, and it's so intellectualized. For us, for me, I have to experience this. And that sense of awakening that you described is beautiful, because there's that sense that you were just like this. We talk a lot about self-observation in the fourth way, and the sense of you almost could pan out like a camera, and you're like sitting there looking at yourself and looking at the world and realizing, oh my gosh, and how much time that we waste just going through the motions of a job, family, all this stuff. And then at the end, you're like, where'd the time go? And
Mhm.
that's the thing that I love about what has happened with you, is that you have really had such a powerful experience of awakening that it's almost like you just feel like you have just started to
Yes.
really dive into it, because you have such enthusiasm and such hunger to know this stuff. And there's
Mhm.
something that's almost like it's that there's something that is emerging inside you, that
Mhm.
is there's a hunger. So where are you at now in terms of like, where is this path leading you right now? Because you talk about Steiner, and you talk about you love Carl Jung, and you have a lot of there's joy in your curiosity, and I think that's a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah. So when I first started my esoteric studies, of course, I was at a point at that time where I still felt very burnt by Christendom and my experiences with Christendom. First with my growing up as a child and my mother, the way she really impressed that brand of faith on me, and then later on, of course, I came across, I went to a few churches every now and then, some Christian Bible studies, and there's a I don't know if you've heard of Celebrate Recovery. It's a Christian-based
know all about that.
12-step program. My best friend since childhood, well, I met him when we were teenagers. He's been involved with that for a number of years, and so the other exposure I had to Christendom was kind of through him. So the very Protestant type form of Christianity that we see in our country today, and that really always rubbed me the wrong way. It just never felt right to me either. And he was, of course, he had his own experience with that, and he was very, very zealous about it, and just it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I didn't like the way he was, he was pretty preachy about it. And so I just felt like there was a lot of contradictions in the church, in Christendom. And so after having this experience that I said, and then discovering esotericism, they would talk about Christ and they would talk about Christianity, but they also talked about a lot of other teachings, ancient teachings that predated Christianity. And I was kind of more interested in all that stuff. I really wanted to jump around anything that had to do with Christ and Christianity, and because I just felt like that was just all nonsense. But then after a while, something happened. I came across some writings of esoteric philosophy where they were talking about the Christian mystics, and they were talking about just more of the mystery of Christ, the like Joseph Campbell, that kind of stuff, and the archetypes. And this really spoke to me. And then, so when I started seeing that, okay, there's these inner teachings, there's a deeper teachings about the Christian mysteries, and it really is the same as these other teachings. So it's all there in Christianity too.
Yeah.
I started to discover, and then I noticed I was being drawn more to the readings that I came across where they talk about the German mystic Jakob Burma would come up a lot, and I was just like, oh man, this stuff really spoke to my heart. More so, I started to realize than the stuff about Buddhism and all these other things that seem exotic to us as Westerners. I started to notice that I was really drawn more to the Christian mysteries, and then I came across Carl Jung, and he spoke a lot about the difference between the East and the West, and how we are conditioned as Westerners, and he spoke a lot about Christ in more, in the archetypal manner, and he helped me to see that, well, I am a Westerner, so instead of trying to, go and find, because I felt burnt still a little bit by Christianity, instead of trying to run to something really exotic, these other teachings that are pre-Christian, that maybe, that's not the best idea. Maybe I need to stay right here, and I have a purpose to explore more of these inner teachings that are being spoken of in esoteric Christianity. And then of course that led me to Steiner. About the same time I came across Steiner, and he spoke of the Christ event and the mystery of Golgotha, and that as being the most significant thing in human history. The Christ came at the balancing point in the center of human evolution. He
Hmm.
came at that particular time for a real purpose in the evolution of humanity. And so that it just all started leading me back to esoteric Christianity. And then after Jung and he was talked about the early church fathers. So then I started going studying Gnosticism, early Christianity, ancient Christianity, and the church fathers. And it just, ever since then, I really feel like, I need to put my focus here and be really rooted instead of being more eclectic like I was and wanting to jump around and avoid Christianity, and just realize, well, it's right here in my home. It's been there in front of me the whole time. I just didn't realize that there was that much depth to it. And so for me, that's where my journey is really focused right now.
Oh,
Is on
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, that's exactly my route as well in terms of the curiosity with it. Joseph Campbell in particular, I discovered when I was 19, watching the Bill Moyers interviews, and
Mm-hmm.
that just literally blew me away. And what Joseph Campbell did was he allowed the American Jesus in my own mind to tear up his U.S. citizenship card and and realized that Jesus was actually not just an American. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it broadened it. It was like he made Jesus legitimate because he made
Yeah.
Jesus universal, and he made Jesus so archetypal, and he allowed Jesus to be placed in the pantheon of all these gods and all of these spiritual fathers, and he made Christ legitimate to me. That's what Joseph Campbell did. And then in college I was introduced to I had a professor named Roland Sherrill, who taught religious studies there at IUPUI in Indianapolis. And I took one class with him, and it was one of my best of all time. And we studied Jung, and that was along with Joseph Campbell, just blew me
Mm-hmm.
away. And from then on, I'm just been going from person to person, writer to writer, and just meeting these certain people along the way. Ted Nottingham being one of them, and several people
Right.
on this channel. We all have Ted as kind of a common denominator as a mentor, and
Yeah.
he is in the Orthodox line of and the mystery schools.
Mm-hmm.
He's in that line of teaching, and it really is. And Charles Ashton and Robin Amos, all these guys are for me are connected. And that's one of the things that we're learning, is that Christianity in its essence has to be passed on from person to person. And that's one of the things that the church is fine, but we really need this one-on-one, and we need to be able to walk beside people, and we need to be able to be there with them and say, that I'm on this journey with you. And we use this image a lot on this channel of like, our channel is kind of like a campfire alongside a path, and we're all just kind of saying, hey, you want to stop by and warm up for a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's what it
Yeah.
is. There's nothing more to it. There's no membership or anything like that. It's just, hey, share your story. And the fact that you're interested in Steiner is insignificant. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want you to
Mhm.
talk about Rudolf Steiner and why you're so connected with his work.
Okay. Yeah. So when I first his name kept coming up, like through some of the videos that I was watching at that time, and then in some of the stuff I would read. But I was like, who is this guy? And so I one of the first readings I discovered of him was called "The Wrong and Right Use of Esoteric Knowledge," because I came across the video, and then they referenced Steiner, and then I was reading through the comments, and they were talking about technology today, and then Steiner he was talking about this technology at his time, so this would have been over 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? I didn't know. This is fascinating. I got to so I bought this little book. It was from one of his small lecture cycles. I can't remember what date it was, probably in the well, I think this one might have been in his later days, maybe in the early 1920s. But anyways, it's called The Wrong and Right Use of Esoteric Knowledge. And oh man, it was so deep. And so I read that, and he was talking about this. He was alluding to, well, more than alluding, he was saying that in the near future, we are going to be faced with this existential type crisis with technology, and it's going to be advancing. And he was talking about human consciousness, and even our human consciousness being transplanted into technology. He was talking about those kind of things. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And he said, but what we are going to have to watch is who. So one of the things Steiner really emphasized is to not get one-sided or have abstractions in when we are trying to delve into understanding, getting a real understanding of spiritual science, to not take abstractions of our concepts, but to really get a really broad perspective of the bigger picture of things. And he really admonished a lot of the people he lectured to not get one-sided in their views. So he said what he said about the technology is that, well, he said we are going to be faced with certain spiritual influences that will actually be working through this technology. And one of those, or a couple of those that he spoke of quite a bit in many of his writings, was what he called the Luciferic influence and the Aromatic influence. And so these are really important in what's going on and the overall picture of human evolution on the spiritual level. And so he was talking about there could be certain people in the world in the future who could use this technology in what he would sometimes worded as a backwards way, not for the real progress. So he said, we kind of have a responsibility, I guess is what he was saying, not to be fearful of these things, not to be fearful of the certain influences that could be possibly working through technology, but because we are actually going to be imbuing our own, what's in us into this technology. And so, yeah, he was just saying that the fear thing is important, not to get wrapped up in the fear and think that, oh, Lucifer or Ahriman's working in this technology, I got to stay away from it, and, because that's evil. He wouldn't have said that. He would have said that, well, we can be channels of the spirit, the greater influences of the spirit for the future of where we are supposed to be going, and allow that stuff. The technology can actually be used for good. It doesn't need to be a bad thing. So
with Steiner, it seems like there's a tremendous amount of emphasis on thought and how vibrant and energizing and how inspiring evolution within our existence, and a very similar to Teilhard de Chardin and some of the guys I really like. So talk a little bit about just how that is different than the chakras in terms from the bottom up. He was almost from the top down, wasn't he? In terms of the importance of thinking and the importance of thought, and really allowing these higher beings to help guide us to this higher awakening.
Well, I think he would have went both ways, actually. If I understand Steiner correctly, I'm not I don't consider myself a real expert on Steiner, but from my understanding, yeah, you're right. he did tend to talk more about this, what was influencing us from the outside, that in every epoch, there was different streams from, you could say, the spiritual heights, from the spiritual realms, from the unseen, that were working on the human evolution of, on mankind as a whole. So one epoch could have certain spiritual beings from the spiritual realms sending in streams into humanity, and then later, like for instance, I think what he said was, some of the spiritual streams that were working during, he said there was 5 epochs after Atlantis. We're in the 5th post-Atlantean epoch. And the previous one was the Greco-Latin. The one before that would have been the Egypto-Chaldean. And he said the forces that were working during the Egypto-Chaldean are going to come back in this epoch and will be working on us. So yeah, he said, he definitely talked about how Steiner, I believe, he said our thoughts are actually not our own, that thoughts are actually universal through humanity as a whole, and that they're actually different spiritual beings that work on our thoughts, and that's where a lot of our thoughts come from.
So we're almost like a receiver.
Yes.
And almost, so our job is one of the jobs that we in terms of this, because Moravia, if we talk about this consciousness, that's the awakening of this consciousness. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to awaken so that we can be a proper receiver, a more purified receiver to these messages that are coming from outside, as Jesus was, the Christ, rather, after the baptism, was this funnel, this channel for us, and how that just, and we don't have time to go into it. Maybe we should have another video on this, because just
I could
Steiner
talk about
stuff,
this.
you know what I mean? Just the Steiner stuff. So as we kind of wind down here, we just got a couple minutes left. I really appreciate you spending time with us. We've got so much more to talk about, but I'm just so appreciative of you coming on and sharing your story with us, and giving people hope, for those who are in a cult or in Jehovah's Witness or somewhere, to realize that if you have an inkling and you have a call, there's probably something guiding you out of that, and there are people out there to help you. So I'm sure that if there's anyone listening, they can leave a message for Tim, and I'm sure we could help and connect you with Tim, and really, you know what I mean? If there's someone out there hearing this, that because you were there at some point, and I'm sure you would have loved to have had someone to say, hey, I've been here. It's okay. It's going to be okay.
Oh yeah. I had a hard time there for a while. I felt like there's nobody I could talk to about this stuff, because the only people that I knew that were Christians, they just wanted to talk about just this really outer form that didn't have this depth that I was starting to see. So there's definitely more to it. I feel I just like to add, for anybody that's still listening and has some questions about Christianity, and they felt like they've been really burnt by it, that there it might be right there in front of you and you just didn't realize it. And I think that Christianity has a very special purpose for us, and especially right now. I feel like we are heading into a different age, you could say. And Steiner would have said that we are still in the early stages of Christianity. It's like a living stream that is growing, and the seeds, Steiner would have said they were planted earlier during the original Christ impulse into the human constitution, and sort of as a preparation for later times of what it actually was meant to, how it was meant to unfold into something much more spiritual. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much. We've got so many more things to talk about, but thank you so much for coming on here and spending time on this Saturday afternoon here in the March, and just appreciate you so much, and appreciate our friendship, and just excited to maybe do another one, because I think we should have one just on Steiner.
Sure.
I've just started to read a lot that you've shared, and just really fascinated by some of these ideas. So, well, listen, you take care of yourself, and we'll just we
You
we
too.
will connect, and but just thank you so much for spending the Saturday afternoon with us.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. It was my pleasure. Thanks, Pete.